So Sadiq Khan's ultra-low emission zone comes into effect today in all London boroughs, meaning the likes of my dad has now got his car, which is perfectly functional, just locked on the drive. So you can't go anywhere. Apparently it's for net zero and to improve London's air quality. We'll get to how that's.
London's air quality.
Yeah, but
If
it's
you
a load of
wanted to
rubbish.
improve that down some of these boroughs, you would outlaw all takeaway restaurants.
Yeah, well, most of the London suburbs that is now coming into effect is
Think of the Indian food.
well,
You English, you went out for all the spice and you didn't bring any back.
it's nowhere near as built up as the regular city. So I live in a place where there's no tube line and there's still a bit of greenery. But no, we can't drive our car to the local supermarket.
So are you not even if, for instance, say that you have, I don't know, some kind of secure tax haven compound out of London, and you wanted to just drop your car off there because you didn't even want to have the hassle of it being in your driveway, you still have to pay the ULEZ charge if you're just transporting your own car out of the city to have it somewhere that isn't London.
Oh yeah, we'll also find out that if you were to go back up to the north and stay, and then go, oh,
Beautiful.
I had to fly, and it's really cheap to fly from Heathrow, so I'm going to drive and just park my car there while I go on holiday. You have to pay the charge to drive into London Heathrow now.
Yeah, I have actually run into the ULEZ before because at the moment at the moment it's expanded even further, but one of the last times I went into London and accidentally ended up in Brixton because I was going to see a gig.
I'm so sorry.
I would never go to Brixton for any other reason. Trust me, I honestly saw a robbery happen. It was kind of scary. I paid the ULEZ charge because Brixton's in the innermost part of London where you do have to pay these charges. And then I got back to my car and I thought, okay, I've paid it at what, like 5 in the afternoon. Come out of the gig, get back to the car at 11. And because it's London, ridiculous traffic, takes an hour to drive out, well, over an hour. In that time, it passes over midnight and I get charged again for it. And because of the fact that I didn't know, because I thought, well, obviously it'll be a 24-hour carryover. No, it's just for the explicit day that you're there. And if it hits midnight and you're still there, if you've not paid it, you will get fined for it. So after I got home, I got a 60 quid fine for it. So thank you, Sadiq.
Well, as you'll later learn, you
kind man.
Could have just not paid that at all and gotten away with it. And also, it turns out that a group of people that we cannot endorse for legal reasons have made it so that you might not have to pay it at all because some of the recognition cameras have been mysteriously sabotaged in the dead of night by a group calling themselves the Blade Runners.
Oh no! Anyway,
yeah, exactly. My thoughts. Don't pick up on that, GCHQ. I don't endorse any of this. I don't know any of these people, and they're definitely not doing God's work.
Also, Blade Runners is a little bit of a cringy name.
Yeah, it's fine. Before we get into that, I would like to direct you to our website where for as little as £5 a month, you can access our premium content and germane to this topic, learn about how cities are dreadful and you shouldn't live in them because they are human battery farms of the worst people imaginable. They induce anxiety. They, way back when there was still lead in petrol fumes, were causing really high crime rates. And they are the dregs of civilization. So get out of them, like London.
Yeah, it's just the lead.
Can. Well, yes. The changing demographics may have changed the crime rate.
I will say, if you are one of those utmost dregs of society that lives in a city and will continuously vote for the sorts of policies that put in people who will destroy those cities, you can stay. You can stay. Don't move out. Maybe you deserve it.
I mean, London deserves better than Sadiq Khan. And speaking of which, this is Sadiq Khan boasting about bringing in ULEZ. So he's, bear in mind, this is today, nearly 700,000 drivers will face paying a £12.50 a day charge to use an otherwise perfectly usable car. That's 25% of all cars in the city, according to the RAC. And in addition, there are 120,000 other vehicles like minibuses and lorries that may not fall within his very strange list of exemptions. And this new London-wide ULEZ zone includes Heathrow, as I said. So anytime someone wants to drive for their holidays, he's going to be getting an extra bit of revenue for that to paper over the gaping hole he's left in TfL's finances. Sadiq Khan's argued this is necessary because the air quality in the capital is a health emergency. About 4,000 Londoners die prematurely due to causes linked to pollution every year, starting in 2019. We'll get to the validity of that stat later.
I imagine is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, died with pollution within 28 days of taking a breath. Khan told The Guardian that he had visited a children's hospital after the death of 9-year-old Ella Kissy Deborah, who was the first person to have air pollution listed as her cause of death in an inquest in the UK because she had very severe asthma. Now, I would presume there are probably other factors involved in that. I'm not an expert on the case, but considering it was the first person, and we're capitalizing off of one, And then we have this 4,000 statistic that's very dubious coming up later. And considering the air quality in London just keeps increasing every year because of technology and the various things that they can do with catalytic converters in cars, etc., smells to me a little bit like manufacturer consent to take the car away. But there you go. There's going to be a £160 million scheme run by TfL to help you scrap your own car. So it's going to give you £2,000 to get rid of your old car, so you can then go and buy a really expensive new one
£2,000. That's it.
of your own tax back.
Of your own tax back. Okay. And you're in London, so they'll probably charge you for the benefit anyway. So you'll probably get what, like a £500 surcharge on that. So that'll be £1,500.
Something like that. Also, just a quick anecdote. My uncle decided, because he lives in the Bromley borough, to get rid of his old van. And when he got rid of it, he got rid of it a week before. They upped the scrappage incentive to £7,000. So they upped it. They scaremongered everyone. And so he lost out on a load of his own money back and has shelled out a lot more money for a van that he could have otherwise kept because it was working just fine.
I mean, I wouldn't. I hate London. I make a point to try not to go there as
Depends
often
on the areas.
as much as possible. Yeah, I'm sure there's still nice areas, but I still just wouldn't want to because it's just a hassle to get into. If you're not getting a train into there, and even then the train tickets to get into London, depending on where you're starting off from, will be ridiculously expensive in the first place. If you're driving into there, then you've got to worry about all of this stuff. And if you're not driving into there, but you're driving into the outskirts and trying to hope to get a tube from the outskirts into the deeper into London, you've got to worry that the outskirts, how far can I drive around these outskirts before I end up on a one-way road that has no turnoffs that'll take me straight into a ULEZ zone? There's such a hassle to even be able to get there. And so, I'm more than happy for them to just, I don't know, with London, close off the exits, close off
Harry,
the
I
entrances.
still live
No,
there.
Well, you shouldn't.
Well, you try getting a house price literally anywhere at X amount of age.
This is also fair. I'll make an exception for you.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
dig you
Thank
like
you.
a great escape underground tunnel that you can
The
go through.
sovereign is he who decides the
Yeah,
exception.
There
definitely.
you go. King of London has said.
The other interesting factor as well is that Sadiq Khan closed all the bus lanes for any other vehicle. So before COVID, it used to be only a set amount of time during rush hour you couldn't drive in them. And so he's made them very large because London has a very interconnected bus network. He decided to do an 18-month trial of closing all the bus lanes and concentrating all the traffic into single car
Nothing
lanes.
so permanent as a temporary government program.
Yeah, it's not been lifted yet. And so what ends up happening is it increases the congestion, elongates rush hour, and so it just so happens that emissions start ticking up because more people are sitting in traffic right before he suggests ULEZ. Definitely not manufactured consent. And speaking of which, this
Are we
is.
thinking that Sadiq Khan is playing 4D chess, or is he just an idiot?
I think he probably received some of his opinions from on high, considering one of the environmental graphics he shared at the start of the year was from the World Economic Forum. But
I mean, because obviously with the immigration, the fact that he wants more and more immigration into London, presumably from countries that share his national ethnicity, then I assume that is him trying to play 4D chess, even though it's very blatant, to try and make sure that he's got permanent voting block. Yeah. With other things, I kind of just think that he's a confused, bumbling idiot. I think he's stupid.
I think that he's trying to position himself for a job at the UN or the WEF or the like, and so he'll implement whatever policy on whatever timeline he is given. And so he will just put money in the right places and say the right things to try and marginalize opposition as far right.
What job would he have at the UN or the WEF? What does he stand there in the bathrooms holding towels for people?
He'd probably just be some kind of policy advisor. They invent jobs for these people, let's be fair. And speaking of manufacturing consent, the Times looked into where does this claim of 4,000 people a year dying come from? And they found that it came from an Imperial College London Environmental Research Group study. It used data on particulate matter and nitrogen oxide in London's air to estimate these pollutants cause the equivalent of between 3,600 and 4,100 deaths a year. So he's going with a middling number that sounds nice and round and high. In the UK, particulate matter is released mostly by burning wood and coal in domestic fires and stoves. So road transport only makes up 12% of emissions. So that's very low, but all right. So the figure doesn't mean 4,000 people die a year as a direct result of air pollution. The research paper explains that between 61,800 and 70,200 life years, effectively life expectancy, are lost every year. So this doesn't mean that 4,000 people die a year.
So I've came to me in a dream. Yeah. Essentially, that's the level. I danced around the Oogie Boogie fire and discovered that we are all having 70,000 life years taken away. The spirit of London is losing its vibrancy.
Why are you Benjamin Zephaniah?
I don't know. Who is that?
That's the Jamaican poet that's on. You covered those bloody underground poems that were
I
on.
purged these things from my mind.
That's probably for the best. Another way of presenting the same research is that each person in London is losing an average of 2.5 to 2.8 days of life expectancy every year. That's it. Right. Okay. So you have to abandon your
My
car.
extended weekend, no.
Now, there is a conflict of interest in this data. Some critics have raised concerns over the fact that the research group in Imperial College was commissioned by the mayor's office and wasn't peer reviewed. So Sadiq Khan paid for his own research to then generate the consent and the reason.
And then had nobody else look over it.
Yeah. The Environmental Research Group received £800,000 of taxpayer funding from Khan's administration over the past 2 years. Some other research that Sadiq Khan funded, but weirdly they don't cite. Last year, the mayor's office commissioned Jacob Solutions, which is an American professional services firm, to examine the impact of expanding ULEZ as of today. In its 200-page assessment, it published in May, it predicted the extension will reduce both particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide levels this year, although only by a minor and moderate percent. Now, by minor, they mean 0.1, and by moderate, 1.4.
So this is like, don't worry, guys, house prices have finally dropped for the first time in years by 0.1%. The West is saved. I'm going to save up for my countryside mansion right now.
That could be a rounding or recording error. It's that minuscule. And then it turns out that if you look, and this is something that LBC did, a little investigation, if you look at the air pollution on the underground, if I just skip back a bit.
So just how polluted is the underground? Let's go and find out.
So if you look at that, that's the numbers above ground in a train station, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parts per molecule is 2.5 odd. And if you go to the underground, it's about 130. So where Sadiq Khan is encouraging everyone to go, because they've no longer got a car, is well over 100 times more polluted.
And then any adverse health effects that will come from that will be used as further evidence for why they need to expand it even more and why they need to clamp down with even more random, nonsensical measures to try and protect people's health.
Yeah, spot on. There you go. So it's not about the environment.
If you're going to spend all this money, just give everyone a free bicycle in London.
Yeah, but I don't want more cyclists. They're already annoying enough.
I mean, if you're gonna be a full on, I'm going to fist smashes down on the freedoms of London peoples. Just close all the roads, give everyone a bicycle, and go off you trot.
Don't give them ideas, please. And speaking of more useless government officials, this is the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, who, brace yourself, lads, he's written a strongly worded letter.
Oh,
I'm sure this will come to something.
Thank God.
Yeah, and he said the government does not have the legal power to stop it. Yes, you do. Now, there was a community note on this that's been mysteriously removed that did say the Conservatives have about an 80-seat majority and they could just pass legislation blocking it. And Nigel Farage has already looked into various legal avenues that you could use to prevent ULEZ being rolled out. But bear in mind, the Conservative government actually tacitly agrees with this because Grant Shapps, when he was Transport Minister, and he's still heavily on net zero, encouraged Sadiq Khan to expand ULEZ. So the Conservative government are just posing as opposition so they can try at the ballot box next year when they're set for a Labour blowout to look more popular than the Labour Party, but both parties agree that this is a good thing.
Yeah, of course they do. I hate parliamentary British politics. I hate the Uniparty. I want it all to crash and burn.
Yeah, as you've often said, the Conservative Party, bar maybe one or two decent MPs relegated to the backbenches who are castrated by being rebels and isolated from the front bench, they exist only to sandbag actual right-wing opposition and effective movement from happening.
Whilst also, on a national level, being the most radically left-wing party that the UK has ever had.
Yeah, and it turns out that we're going to get even more radically left-wing. And again, the Conservative Party actually agree with this because they've looked into this for electric cars. ULEZ is actually a pilot scheme for the entire country. So this is a report from the Daily Mail. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has called for an army of experts, because we've all had enough of those, to build a sophisticated new pricing system for the capital's roads using the cameras installed for his hugely controversial ULEZ zone and congestion charge. It would mean drivers could incur charges based on the length of the trip taken, the congestion levels on the roads, and the levels of pollution emitted. So a kind of carbon credit score for your own individual commuter. A source said it is an open secret in City Hall that it's being worked on. A dedicated website called Project 2030, just also happens to convene on that. Yeah, what a coincidence. Don't be a conspiracy theorist. Contains a request for engineers to join TfL, that's Transport for London, to lead the way in introducing a new, more sophisticated type of road pricing. Although Mr. Khan has denied any plans for per-mile charging, papers produced by the Mayor's office and TfL explain how road pricing could work. Quote, new technology could be used to integrate existing schemes such as the congestion charge, low emission zone and ultra low emission zone into a smarter, simpler, and fair scheme that would charge motorists on a per mile basis. Different charging rates would apply depending on variables such as how polluting a vehicle is, the level of congestion in the area, and access to public transport. So that really polluted public transport that he wants you to get on. The document, which was part of a consultation on ULEZ, added, we are now starting to explore the potential for future road user charging. A well-placed source said the cameras from ULEZ and the congestion charge could be used to develop the levy. So the number plate recognition cameras that caught you going through at midnight, they're going to be for however, wherever you decide to travel and arbitrarily apply you a certain charge based on whatever arbitrary metric of carbon or pollution they calculate.
The problem is as well that these cameras don't work very well in the first place, or at least the people administering them don't really know what to do. Don't know how to do their jobs, and if they're using automated systems, then yeah, there's a massive wide margin for error. There was a recent situation that I found myself in where I was dropping off my missus to go to work in the morning at a supermarket because she was working at a supermarket. And I went in, before work, dropped her off about 8:30. I'm only there in that car park for 5 minutes tops because I'm just dropping her off. And then I come to work, do my day's job, go back there so that I can pick her up in the afternoon. Once again, maybe there for 20 minutes tops while I'm waiting for her to finish work. There's about an 8.5 hour gap in between these two periods. A few days later, I get a letter from that supermarket because they had caught me parked there for 9 hours, which was over the 3 hours allotted free parking time that you get there. So just because of the fact that at one arbitrary point they'd noticed me there and another arbitrary point I'd been there with no crossover in between, I hadn't been there for the entire day, it just thought that I must have been there for 9 hours and decided to charge me off the back of it. And that was presumably all completely automated.
Yeah, the incompetence of bureaucracy will get it wrong and then make all the work on you to get your money back and prove your innocence. It's like in the opening of Brazil where they bust into the wrong guy's apartment because they got the wrong letter.
The fly fell into the typewriter machine, gave the wrong letter. Instead of Tuttle, it was Buttle, and someone dies.
Yeah, and then his widow has to claim compensation for her dead husband. It's the banality of bureaucracy is going to kick in. Last month, the mayor's spokesperson said that per-mile technology was many years away and that there's no prospect of it being introduced in the foreseeable future. That's not very believable.
I don't believe you.
No, because Patrick Doug, who's the TfL's group finance director, said it is recruiting a significant number of software engineers and other technical specialists to look at designing a future road charging system. So the guy at the head of TfL, who's actually responsible for spending the money, said we're doing it. So in comments to a London Assembly meeting, seen by the Daily Mail, Mr. Doug said, the mayor has asked us to explore a new technology to see if we can improve the way we charge to make it fairer and smarter. Labour has, of course, dismissed the claims as completely untrue, but the mayor, who chairs TfL as well, said his aim is for 80% of all trips in the capital to be car-free by 2041. So he's deliberately trying to get you out of your cars. So he's trying to price you off the road. So this would be an effective measure to inconvenience people, and they're actively hiring people to do it. So this is the behavioural nudge turning into the shove, and then them trying to gaslight you into saying, well, you're in a different place now, but it's actually a good thing.
And you are right that London is always used as the testing grounds for anything that will eventually get thrown out to most of the other built-up areas of England.
Yeah, absolutely. So because it doesn't seem like the political establishment is willing to take action on this, because they're all in lockstep, some direct action has been taken. And, well, I can't condone this, but we'll go over to ITV's Definitely Fair and Balanced report on the Blade Runners doing things for themselves.
The attacks on ULEZ cameras are far from subtle. Some have the cables sliced or ripped out. Others are repositioned so they point at the sky or trees instead of traffic. And then there are those which are simply unbolted from their brackets and taken away.
This is the A224 in Orpington, where along a 2-mile stretch we counted 6 junctions where ULEZ cameras have been targeted. 3 cameras were vandalised. 17 have been stolen.
So why has the London Borough of Bromley become a hotspot for ULEZ sabotage?
I honestly don't know, but what I do know, without condoning it in any way, shape or form, is I have been warning, amongst others, for months and months and months of there being lots of very upset, very scared and increasingly angry people out and about, and I think that's manifesting itself on the streets.
A few days ago, a figure dressed in black attacked 2 cameras in the centre of Bromley, apparently unfazed by an audience of drinkers in a local pub. But not everyone approves of the vigilantes.
I think it's terrible. Wrong.
Dreadful. I don't know why these people have to do this. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to look after our environment, aren't we?
There's no point, right? Like, vandalising something's not going to change the fact that it's expanding. It's pointless.
The attacks on the cameras leaves clean air campaigners depressed.
They're all across the world now, these clean air zones, and they're working. And then on the other side, you've got people, parents even, who are turning to vandalism and criminal damage. Yet actually, I think it's like they're cutting off their noses to spite their face, because these measures will benefit them and their children and all of us. And we all need to breathe cleaner air.
Transport for London has now decided to fight back with a new armoured camera. The cables at the back and the bolts which hold the cameras in place will be protected by steel cases.
So, just so you're aware,
Terrible business.
that woman at the end there from Mums for Lungs, which is a campaign group that's been pushing for ULEZ, it turns out that they're partnered with the Impact on Urban Health, which is part of Guy's and St Thomas's Foundation, which is an NHS foundation trust. So the NHS is funding campaign groups to say that this problem is worse than it is, so then the mayor can go and pay for also your taxes a research interest group to give him the answers he wants to then manufacture the consent to take your car away. This whole network, it's all working in lockstep. So it's unsurprising, as that Bromley City Councillor said there, and the Bromley City Council have actually been half decent on this because they've said we want to stop this. They've put legal challenges forward. They're my neighbouring borough. So
I think a lot of them know that they have to at least voice some kind of concern over it, just because of the fact that their voting constituents aren't particularly happy with these measures being put in. And if you want to know, once again, I'm not condoning this, but if you want to know what you're up against and whether you're on the right side, just look at the people supporting these things. So we had an overbearing henpecker at the end there for Mums with Mums for Lungs.
Yeah,
ridiculous name. And then you had what? You had a foreigner, Discount Joe Brand,
and a guy with a face tattoo.
A fat face tattoo man. So pathetic.
Yeah. So much like the Bromley City Councillor, we can't endorse this because we're legally not allowed to. But it's unsurprising that it's happening. And so let's take
I will say I do not support the cameras being put there in the first place. That's the most I can say.
Yes. So let's take a peruse at what's been done here. Well,
if you make it so we can't just cut the wires,
they'll just cut down the pole. Yeah, so they've just been wrapping them up in banners. In my local area, they've been putting big red stickers with ULEZ camera and an arrow pointing upwards. So you can know where the camera is and avoid it. And it's definitely not a signal for people in the dead of night to go and sabotage them. Someone set fire to one. They dumped loads of sand in it. One of the really funny ones here as well. So there was a big car rally of all the cars.
I'm of course laughing because this is so tragic to me that if I didn't, I would be weeping.
Yeah, it's awful. So they just decided to have a car rally of all the cars that are going to get banned. And one of the funniest ones as well is a guy decided to cover his caravan in anti-ULEZ stickers, and he just parked it outside Sadiq Khan's house. So there we go. Not always the most effective as opposed to illegally cutting down those cameras. And don't do that, lads. It would be terrible. But people are voicing their concerns. So nearly 9 out of 10 of the ULEZ cameras have been vandalised in southeast London. That's where I live. Oh dear. How terrible.
Oh.
According to analysis of online crowdsourced data, only 29 cameras out of 185 in Sydenham are working, and only 4 are intact in Bromley, and just 1 is working on the A225. And so we can see what's happened here. The Bromley ones have been spray painted over, so they can't see anything. There have been other ones that have had their cables cut around Twickenham. And then here's a local man. We won't play the clip because there's bad language and this is a family show, who's just been hoarding them like shiny Charizard cards. This isn't
a very
terrible.
I will say also this isn't a particularly smart move to film your own criminal activity.
Yes, other Blade Runners have been masking themselves up because they're obviously worried about catching COVID, and he's putting it on his personal TikTok, which I wouldn't advise doing. But there you go. So over the overall stats that the BBC have got here, over 300 cameras have been damaged or stolen over the last 4 months. This is 339 reports of cameras that have been reported to the Met Police. The unofficial data mapping of the location of disabled cameras suggests that almost 500 cameras could have been at least affected. Some of them might have been repaired. And we have a map here we're going to talk about this map in a moment. This map shows that there are 1,619 cameras outside of the north and south circular roads. 461 of those have been reported as vandalized or stolen. So that's 28% of all of the TfL's network's cameras. TfL are planning to install a total of 2,750 cameras before the expansion comes as of today. So about that map, Martin Daubney points us out, and he says, "Oh no, Daily Mail have accidentally published a map of all of the ULEZ cameras.
Oh no.
So that drivers can
be aware.
Well, yeah, plot routes around them, or maybe even pay them a visit. Like you know how people go and look at old World War I telegraph poles?
Oh, you pay tribute to them.
Yes, exactly. They definitely wouldn't use this map for any nefarious reasons whatsoever.
Well, personally, I would find my nearest ULEZ camera, and I would then from there pinpoint the direction of Mecca, and in tribute to Sadiq Khan, say my prayers.
Exactly, yeah. So you can actually do that because there's an interactive tool on the Daily Mail. It turns out that you can just search.
Apparently, the ULEZ website.
Yeah, you can search your local area, so you can see exactly where your nearest ULEZ camera is for your postcode, and that's really useful. And you know what? Even if you don't do that, even if you fall afoul of ULEZ, even if some horrible criminal doesn't come in the dead of night and cut it down, it turns out that all the signs are terrible. You don't have to pay for it anyway, so you can just put up a license plate that's fake, which is also illegal. So don't do that. But a man, as of last night, won a court case that said, because those ULEZ signs that you ran afoul of, they don't actually say that you have to pay anything.
They also are very, very unclear as to where the ULEZ zones start and end, which is very frustrating. And once again, they don't tell you that if you... I couldn't find it on the website either, unless you go digging into it, that you have to pay for the 24-hour period of the day rather than the 24-hour period from when you pay.
Yeah.
So there was no real indication anywhere given to me that I would have to pay twice.
So this guy knew that, and so he just didn't pay his fines, and then he got a fine of £11,500. This is Noel Wilcox, and he decided to take it to court, and he won because unlike the LEZ, no, it is the LEZ signs, unlike the congestion charge signs which says you have to pay, the ULEZ and LEZ signs don't say you have to pay anything. So he said, well, I just didn't check my phone. I went through the signs, didn't say that I had to pay anything. So how would I know?
This is a good point.
And so
what if you've just got a flip phone? What if you're a man in a van who's very old fashioned? I only want to use my text message with the little old buttons. I don't have a smartphone. Yep.
And so his fines don't apply. And so they've been thrown out. So all of you that had outstanding fines, if you haven't paid it yet, you can do the same. This does unfortunately...
I wish I'd known this last year. Bloody hell.
Yeah, this does unfortunately mean that obviously more of my tax money is going on reprinting all the bloody signs in the first place. But so I just thought I'd end up with that, and that is that the entire thing has been rolled out for completely bogus reasons. It's just to inconvenience you off the road. The thing's going to cost more and more money because the cameras keep getting damaged and because the signs are bunk. But I cannot condone anyone going out and finding their local camera and paying homage to it. Definitely don't do that, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for watching that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can subscribe to the website and support us for as little as £5 per month, which will also give you access to all of the premium videos and articles we have on there, including Dan's Brokenomics series, where the most recent episode, he is talking to a reformed hedge fund manager, James Lavish. If you're interested in finding more about what Dan does, you can follow him on Twitter at @KingBingo_. Thank you and goodbye.